Hello and welcome to the Satluj Podcast. Now, the term genocide has been used and abused for many years, but one country that has witnessed several genocides on its own soil is, of course, India. In fact, one of our commenters recently stated that the Indian military has primarily been used since its inception against its own people, something that actually isn't far from the truth. And of course, one of the key victims of these genocides is the Sikh people who've suffered, amongst other minorities, at the hands of the Indian state. Well, to discuss if the Indian state does indeed have some morbid addiction to mass killing of those it disapproves of, I'm joined today by our regular guest, Dr. Gurinder Singh Grewal. Dr. Grewal, welcome. Thank you for joining us once again today.
Good morning, Vaheguru Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ki Fateh, Angus. So what we'd like to talk today is India's genocidal legacy and contemporary complicity from Punjab 1984 to Ukraine, Gaza and beyond. So genocide is not only about direct killing, but also about systemic state policies that destroy communities, erase cultures, and enable mass suffering. The United Nations Genocide Convention 1948 defines genocide as the deliberate intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. India's action in Operation Blue Star and Operation Shanti 1984 against the Sikh community exemplify genocide by this definition. For decades later, India continues to demonstrate a disturbing continuity, enabling global genocide by helping Russia in Ukraine, arming Israel in Gaza, and contributing to deaths of innocents worldwide through its role in spread of fentanyl precursors, narcotics, trafficking in Africa, and substandard medicine. So we will discuss this in more detail, but I think this we can conclude India is a perpetrator of genocide domestically and global accomplice to genocidal violence and systemic mass killings abroad.
So, Dr. Grewal, of course, one of the key years that we often refer to when the word genocide is used in India is, of course, 1984. That was a fairly important. It was one of the most important times in recent history, certainly of the 20th century, for the Sikh people. Can you talk us through that period in 1984? Of course, we had Operation Blue Star. Then we had, of course, the events of November of that same year after Indira Gandhi's assassination. Those have been referred to as genocides. Would you agree that they are indeed genocides?
Yes. In June 1984, India launched Operation Blue Star, deploying tanks, artillery, and troops against the Golden Temple complex in Amritsar. The operation destroyed Sikh religious institutions, including the Sikh Reference Library, and killed thousands of pilgrims, many of the women and children. The deliberate targeting of Sikh sacred space and identity marked an attack on the community's spiritual foundation. So I think this qualifies as a Sikh genocide. Followed by this event in October 1984, Operation Shanti was instituted, which took place after Indira Gandhi's assassination. Previously organized plan, which was to be implemented a few days later, took place. Thousands of Sikhs were burned alive or hacked to death in Delhi and other cities. Police either stood idle or aided mobs armed with electoral rolls, where they were marking the Sikh houses, iron rods, and kerosene. Investigated by Human Rights Watch and independent commissions confirmed state complicity. Survivors rightly call this Sikh genocide.
So, of course...
So the act of 1984, with the Genocide Convention criteria, killing seriously, body harm, destruction of religious institutions, and conditions calculated to annihilate a community, India has never acknowledged this genocide, allowing impunity and reinforcing a political culture of violence against minorities, especially Sikhs, Dalits, now Muslims also. So this Sikh genocide has not stopped. There's a transnational oppression taking place, killing of Niger in Surrey, Canada, killing of a Sikh in England and Pakistan. Few days ago, the Nikhil Gupta, who is responsible for trying to arrange a murder for hire against Gurpatwan Singh Pannu, is in jail in New York. And new charges are also now leveled against him and the Yadav, who was raw agent of their part in killing people in Nepal, Pakistan, and India. So this practice has not stopped. They feel they have impunity, and they just keep doing the same thing.
So, Dr. Grohl, if I may ask you, we do tend to focus a lot on 1984, but of course, the years that followed those incidents in 1984, the 1980s and the 1990s, a whole generation of young Sikhs were murdered in cold blood. They were extrajudicially murdered by law enforcement, by the Indian state. There are huge tales of enormous numbers, tens of thousands of young Sikh men who were disappeared. They were taken out into the countryside, never to be seen again. And the only evidence that was accumulated was anonymous cremations. So would you even think that this itself denotes it, or can be defined as a genocide, just like the others?
Yes, this continues. Now we just had a function recognizing Sarwar Jaswant Singh Khalsa's sacrifice 30 years ago. In 1995, he was abducted and killed. What was his fault? He and his friends investigated very methodically and scientifically how the people who was disappearing has been actually killed by police. And they went from cremation grounds, police records, which police would not help them, then municipal records. And he was able to find at least 25,000 innocent young Sikh men murdered by police. Because of that, he was killed, and there was a movie made on his life, which is still not allowed to release, even though it's very, very factual. 6 police officers were punished, which is very unusual in India. That's all because of the efforts of Mrs. Kalada. 2 for life imprisonment and 4 for 7-year prison, which later High Court converted to life imprisonment. So yes, there is a documentation of thousands innocent Sikhs. We don't even know the exact number, because sometimes the families are so afraid they lost one son, and they were threatened if they continued, they may lose the second one. So yes, these atrocities continued much later than 1984. As far as we know, 1995, 1996, this was the behavior. But even after that, it has not stopped. Now the Indian state is using weaponization of water against the Punjabis, both east and west. It's well documented. This Pakra Dam and the other dams, the water control is with the central government. Even when they know, these people know who are managing it, they should release the water because they're reaching the level. They wait till the last moment and take directions from central government. I think this is also part of genocide. Destroying Punjab's agriculture, breadbasket, killing people, killing animals. So I think this genocide has not stopped. It is continuing, yes.
And of course, we've talked about this genocide of the Sikh minority in India, but of course it's not just limited to the Sikh community. The Muslim community has also suffered equally, and of course there are all sorts of similar events, let's call them, that have been called genocides against the Islamic population. For example, of course, Narendra Modi himself is known as the Butcher of Gujarat. Could you talk us through maybe a few other examples of other minorities that have been targeted?
Well, Muslims in Bombay in 1992 and 1993 was killed. Gujarat 2002, what you're referring to, there was a mass killing of Muslims. Even one of the gentlemen was a member of the parliament who knew Modi personally, and he kept calling, and Modi ignored his call. And the wave of lynching continued even in 2010. This is on the same logic that state sanctioned mass violence presented as a national security or public order. Genocide became a normalized instrument of political consolidation in India. Last election, Prime Minister Modi was so afraid of losing, he personally campaigned in the election openly against the Muslim community. There's no Muslim candidate in their party. So yes, Muslims have become a target, especially in the countryside or rural areas. They have been crushed. They're so crushed economically that they just don't dare to stand up. In cities, still there is some resistance. Yes, Muslims are being killed. In Manipur, Christians are being killed. There's a genocide taking place, which has not stopped on the eastern part of India. Manipur is one example. Many other places, Dalits are being crushed. Yes, genocide in India has become norm for this BJP government backed by RSS ideology.
So clearly, there is some sort of addiction to mass killing on behalf of the RSS, certainly against its enemies. And again, we've focused primarily on domestic issues, whether it's the Sikhs or the Muslims or the Christians in Manipur. But of course, India has been accused recently of getting involved in international politics from a negative perspective. And immediately I'm thinking about Ukraine and Gaza. Could you talk to us again? Do you think this same addiction is being expressed externally from India? Do you think India is now interfering internationally in other potential genocides?
Yes. In Ukraine, it's shielding and financing Russia. Since 2022, India has purchased vast quantities of discounted Russian oil, resold refined products abroad, and abstained from the UN resolution condemning Moscow's invasion. By economically sustaining Russia, India indirectly finances war crimes committed against Ukraine civilians. This constitutes complicity in genocide and crime against humanity. In Gaza also, they are arming Israel's genocidal campaign. Israel's action in Gaza now is recognized as a genocide by UN and many other countries. In Gaza, Israel's destruction of homes, hospitals, civilians, infrastructures increasingly meets the legal threshold of genocide. India supplies drones, munition, and military technology to Israel. Far from neutrality, this represents material complicity in the killing of Palestine civilians. According to criminal laws, the person who commits a murder is punished, but the accomplice is also guilty. So India is accomplice to this genocide taking place right in front of the whole world in Ukraine and Gaza.
So there are other accusations, Dr. Grewal, that India has been waging a more sublime war, a war that's, let's say, below the surface, that's a little bit more subtle than an overt war zone like Gaza or Ukraine. And this, of course, I'm referring to the drugs trade, the drug industry. Now, India has a huge pharmaceutical industry. It is one of its larger industrial bases. But it has been accused of manufacturing pharmaceuticals, and by pharmaceuticals I'm particularly referring to fentanyl precursors. It has been accused of deliberately selling on the cheap fentanyl precursors to the West, and particularly via Mexico into the US. And this, of course, has got Donald Trump very excited and very angry about. Do you think India is waging a more subtle war through pharmaceuticals and drugs?
Yes. So let me start with one example. A few years ago in Cleveland Clinic, patients who had kidney transplant, they were given immunosuppressive drugs made in India, and the transplants were failing. They recognized that it was the substandard drugs. One of the American journalists, a female journalist, investigator, she has written a book of lies. Bottle of Lies. Bottle of Lies. This book is available, and anybody interested can read. So she went to India and investigated. So they are masters of how to send substandard drugs and how to hide, how to bypass the FDA, because FDA in US will go unannounced and check the pharmaceutical manufacturing sites. India, they have to get a visa and they have to go according to those protocols. And these embassy people were equally corrupt. They will inform them the FDA is coming, so they will do some uh, surface correction, clean things, and all that. But behind the scene, they were selling substandard drugs, faking all the research, which two scientists who work for one of the companies went to public, and then finally they were fined. This company was fined $500 million in U.S. But the practice has not stopped. Recently, I was reading something. There are supposedly about 12,000 pharmaceutical manufacturing houses in India, some very small to the big one. So according to this article, 25% of them really do not supply quality drugs. So in US, they have been caught selling precursors of fentanyl. In US, there are 50,000 some deaths every year on fentanyl overdose. So you can see that they are part of the genocide of American youth. Some of our friends' children have died from fentanyl. It's such a crazy, I do not know why government is not taking strong action. So tens of thousands of Americans are dying. But India, by supplying illicit market drugs, is directly contributing to mass civilian deaths in US. So a few days ago, September 25th, U.S. Department of Treasury's office, Foreign Assets and Control, this is the office name, has imposed sanctions on two Indian nationals, along with India-based online pharmacy, KS International Traders, for their role in supplying hundreds of thousands of counterfeit prescriptions, pills laced with fentanyl and other illicit drugs to victims across the United States. This is the only a few days ago, it was even published in the Indian newspaper, not only in US. So they are, this cost-based society, they don't think anything done wrong to people below or the people who are not like them is wrong. So they don't think they are responsible for the crime. This has become their universal behavior, which has to be stopped. That's why we are talking.
And of course, they are targeting the most vulnerable on the planet. And by that, I'm particularly referring to Africa. India is well known to be pouring cheap and fake, let's call it, pharmaceuticals or ineffective pharmaceuticals into Africa. To people who need it most of all. And of course, they are desperate, some of these people. But of course, again, this extension of mass killing indirectly can be accused against India for their actions by selling cheap pharmaceuticals and ineffective pharmaceuticals into Africa.
Yes, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime has highlighted India's role in the supply of cheap synthetic drugs and pharmaceutical narcotics routed through the West and Central Africa. These substances devastate local population, creating addiction, epidemic, destabilizing society, and killing innocent. One of the pharmaceutical company is from Bombay, ABO, responsible for this drug trade supply to West Africa and Central Africa. And, they are dying left and right, and no action is being taken. In this book I mentioned about other lies, they also mentioned they were supplying drugs for HIV medicine, but there was actually no drugs. So these poor people who were so poor, they were buying those drugs and they were dying. And there were no concern by these pharmaceutical industries in India. WHO monitoring have exposed cases where Indian pharmaceutical companies supply substandard and counterfeit HIV medicine across Africa. Thousands of patients already marginalized by poverty were deprived of effective treatment, leading to premature deaths. India profited economically at the expense of the most vulnerable, accounting to their health-based structure, violence with genocidal consequences. You can see the human life to this Indian government and business means nothing.
So I said in the introduction, Dr. Grewal, that, or the question that we posed was, is India addicted to mass killing? There does appear to be a pattern forming here, a pattern of state behaviour that all the evidence that you've laid out, whether it's domestically or internationally, there is almost this addiction, there is this pattern of behaviour of genocidal will.
Yes. So the evidence is consistent, domestic perpetrators, Sikh genocide, Muslim genocide, international complicity, supporting Russia and Ukraine, arming Israel in Gaza, transnational profiteering from death, supplying fentanyl precursor, narcotics, and substandard medicine to rest of the world. In all these contexts, India demonstrates willingness to sacrifice human life for political, economic, or geopolitical gains. So this is the sad, sad story.
And do you think, I mean, there is a question of accountability here. We've talked about there is a clear pattern forming. The evidence is very clear that there is this, I keep calling it an addiction to mass killing. In terms of accountability on the international stage, they can get away with it domestically because clearly the BJP, the RSS-controlled government, controls the agenda, they control the narrative. So there's very little the ordinary Indian can do. So the pressure has to come from the international community. Do you think India is being held accountable for this?
No, they have not been held accountable, but they should be. So the reason we are talking this is to bring this to people's attention. So whenever the International Crime Courts will bring to justice leaders responsible for the genocide in Ukraine and Gaza, it is equally important that leaders who acted as accomplices like Modi also be held accountable. Genocide does not occur in isolation. It requires network of support, supply, and complicity. By providing political, military, or material backing to aggressors, accomplices share responsibility for the resulting crimes. No nation or leader should escape accountability simply because they stand behind strong powers. Justice must be impartial and universal, applying equally to those who commit crimes and those who enable them. So this is my purpose of bringing to public's attention through Satluj TV, where you have that India needs to be exposed of these genocidal crimes against humanity in India and outside. I have drafted a letter I will be sending to the people I know, friends. I think I'll send it through the Satluj TV. Maybe Satluj TV can also put their website for people to write to the United Nations Secretary General and bring to their attention. What will they do? I don't know. But I think our duty is, once we know something wrong is being done, that we stand up and work against it.
And that does actually lead to a final question, really, that is linked to this. Do you think the evidence that we've talked about today is hugely powerful in the argument for Khalistan?
Yes, because, unless we are free, we cannot get rid of this regime which is corrupt and commits a genocide. The only solution for that, for Sikhs, is to have the independent state. For like the rest of the world, some people go to India, buy cheap drugs because medicines are quite expensive in Western countries. So my appeal to those is, please look at what you're buying. You may be buying cheap medicine, but you're buying junk, which can kill you because your disease is going to continue to progress. And the poor people in Africa, I don't know what the solution. I think is the UN agencies should take charge and supply them the real medicine from Western countries or reliable sources and educate them more to stop this drugs they're buying from India. They think they're buying cheap because they are not rich countries. But this medicine is no use to them.
Indeed, a tragedy unfolding, but there we must leave it. But we will be talking again with Dr. Grail soon to continue our discussion. Dr. Grail, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Angus.
And thank you.
Very
And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.